Queen Elizabeth II owned more than 300 pieces of jewellery. The official count: 98 brooches, 46 necklaces, 37 bracelets, 34 pairs of earrings, 20 tiaras. But here's what's fascinating. If you look at photographs from her 70-year reign and count how many different pieces she actually wore in public, you get a much smaller number. About 50 to 60 pieces appeared regularly. That means over 240 pieces were rarely seen, or never seen at all. These aren't lost. They're not broken. They're sitting in the royal vaults right now. I spent months cross-referencing museum catalogues, exhibition records, and thousands of photographs. And I found 5 tiaras with incredible stories. One was worn by Queen Elizabeth II for decades, then vanished after her death. Another escaped the Russian Revolution, only to be locked away in Britain. A third was owned for 70 years but never worn publicly. Not even once. Today I'm showing you what's been hidden and telling you exactly why each piece disappeared from view. Let's unlock these vaults together. Queen Alexandra's Kokoshnik tiara. Let's start with one of Queen Elizabeth's favourites. The Kokoshnik tiara. You've probably seen photographs of the late Queen wearing this magnificent piece. It's hard to miss. 47 diamond bars rising from a base, each bar set with brilliant cut and rose-cut diamonds. The whole thing designed in the Russian Kokoshnik style. It was made by Garrard in 1919 for Queen Mary, and here's something interesting about its creation. Queen Mary didn't commission it from scratch. She had Garrard take apart an old necklace that Queen Victoria had given to Princess Mary of Teck as a wedding present in 1893. So the diamonds are Victorian. But the tiara design is early 20th century. In August 1936, Queen Mary gave this tiara to her daughter-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, who later became the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother lent it to her daughter, Princess Elizabeth, for her wedding to Prince Philip in 1947, and there's a famous story about that day. As Princess Elizabeth was getting dressed at Buckingham Palace, the tiara snapped. Just broke. Luckily, a Garrard jeweller was standing by. He was rushed to his workshop by police escort and fixed it just in time. The Queen Mother later lent it to Princess Anne for her 1973 wedding and to Princess Beatrice in 2020, but Queen Elizabeth II wore it constantly. State banquets, diplomatic receptions, official portraits. One of her most iconic moments in this tiara: dancing with President Ford at the White House in 1976. She wore it regularly through the 2000s and 2010s. Her last public wearing was in 2015 at a state banquet for the President of Mexico. And then she died in September 2022. The Kokoshnik tiara hasn't been seen publicly since. Queen Camilla has worn many of the late Queen's tiaras, but not this one. Why? Is it being cleaned? Repaired? Is there a plan we don't know about? Or is it simply waiting in the vault for the right moment? We don't know, but a tiara that was worn so often, so publicly, for so many decades, has now been hidden for over 2 years. The Vladimir tiara. Now let me tell you about a tiara that survived a revolution. The Vladimir tiara. This piece was made in 1874 by the Russian court jeweller Bolin. It was created for Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia. She was married to Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich, the uncle of Tsar Nicholas II. The tiara features interlocking loops of diamonds. Beautiful, dramatic, unmistakably Russian. And then came 1917. The Russian Revolution. The Tsar and his family were assassinated. The Romanov dynasty ended. Grand Duchess Vladimir had to flee. But she couldn't take her jewels with her. So she hid them in a safe in her palace in St. Petersburg. Later, 2 British antique dealers posed as servants and smuggled the jewels out of Russia. They carried them in 2 Gladstone bags. Can you imagine? A fortune in diamonds, carried out in luggage. The Grand Duchess died in 1920. She never saw her jewels again. Her daughter, Princess Nicholas of Greece, sold many pieces in the 1920s to support the family. Queen Mary bought the Vladimir tiara, but it had been damaged during its escape from Russia. So Queen Mary had Garrard restore it, and she did something clever. She commissioned 15 emerald drops. The tiara already had pearl drops, but now it could be worn 3 ways: with the pearls, with the emeralds, or with neither, just the diamond loops. Queen Mary wore it often. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, inherited it in 1953, and Queen Elizabeth II inherited it in 2002. The late Queen loved this tiara. She wore it to state banquets, diplomatic receptions, and official events for decades. The last time she wore it publicly? A diplomatic reception in December 2019. Since her death in 2022, the Vladimir tiara has been completely absent from royal events. Queen Camilla hasn't worn it. Neither has the Princess of Wales. A tiara that escaped a revolution, that survived war and exile, that became one of the British royal family's most recognisable pieces. Now hidden again. This time not from revolutionaries, but simply because no one has chosen to wear it. The Strathmore Rose Tiara. This next story is remarkable because it proves something important. You can own a tiara for 70 years and never wear it once. The Strathmore Rose Tiara. This piece was made in the late 1800s in England. It features 5 large diamond roses. Each rose can be detached and worn as a separate brooch. The design is incredibly versatile. It came with 2 frames. One for wearing it as a traditional tiara, another for wearing it as a bandeau, low across the forehead in the 1920s style. In 1923, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was preparing to marry the Duke of York, who would later become King George VI. Her father, the Earl of Strathmore, wanted to give her something special, so he gave her this tiara. A father's gift to his youngest daughter. The Duchess of York wore it proudly in the 1920s. She was photographed in it multiple times. But then her husband became king in 1937, and this charming family piece seemed perhaps too modest for a queen consort, so it was put away. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, Queen Elizabeth II inherited it. And here's the remarkable part. Queen Elizabeth II never wore it publicly. Not once. For 70 years she owned this tiara. It sat in the royal vaults, unused. And then, in November 2023, something unexpected happened. Catherine, Princess of Wales, wore it to a state banquet at Buckingham Palace, 100 years after the Earl of Strathmore gave it to his daughter. It finally emerged again, not on the Queen who owned it for 7 decades, but on the wife of her great-great-grandson, This is what I mean by hidden jewels. They're not lost, they're not forgotten, they're just waiting, sometimes for a century. The Teck Crescent Tiara. Now we come to the most mysterious piece in the collection. This tiara has a royal pedigree that goes back to King George III. It features 20 diamond crescents and 3 diamond roses. The crescents can face either forward or backward, giving it 2 completely different looks. The diamonds originally belonged to Princess Mary, Duchess of Gloucester. She was the daughter of King George III. Her niece, Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck, created this tiara from those diamonds. Princess Mary Adelaide was Queen Mary's mother. So this piece carries the history of 5 generations of British royalty. Queen Mary wore it. The Queen Mother inherited it in 1936. And here's where it gets strange. The Queen Mother wore it exactly once in public. In 1939, during a royal tour of Canada. After that, nothing. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, Queen Elizabeth II inherited it. She never wore it publicly. In the 2000s, the tiara was placed on long-term loan to the Duchess of Cornwall, now Queen Camilla. But even Queen Camilla has never been photographed wearing it publicly. Think about that, a tiara with diamonds from King George III, worn by queens and duchesses for generations, but not seen in public for 85 years. Does it still exist? Is it in good condition? Why won't anyone wear it? We don't know. It's essentially a ghost tiara, documented, verified, but invisible. The Delhi Durbar tiara. Let me tell you about a tiara that King George V called the best he'd ever seen. And it's been worn publicly twice in 113 years. In 1911, King George V and Queen Mary travelled to India for the Delhi Durbar, a grand ceremony to celebrate their coronation as Emperor and Empress of India. The crown jewels never leave Britain, so Queen Mary commissioned Garrard to create something spectacular for the occasion. The result? This tiara, it's 8 centimetres tall, gold and platinum, designed with lyres and scrolls linked by diamond festoons. And it was originally set with 10 Cambridge emeralds, massive stones, absolutely stunning. Later, Queen Mary had it altered to hold the Cullinan 3 and 4 diamonds. These are 2 of the largest diamonds ever found. She wore it to the Delhi Durbar in 1911. Then she lent it to her daughter-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, for the 1947 royal tour of South Africa. That's the second and last time it appeared in public during Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's lifetime. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, Queen Elizabeth II inherited it. She never wore it. In 2005, she lent it to the Duchess of Cornwall. Camilla wore it once, to a state banquet for the King of Norway in October 2005. Since then, nothing. 18 years of silence. A tiara that a king called the best, that was made for an empress, that carries some of the world's most famous diamonds. Hidden. Why? Perhaps it's too historically significant, too tied to Britain's colonial past, too grand for modern sensibilities. We don't know. But the pattern is clear. The most spectacular pieces are often the most hidden. So here's what we've learned. Queen Elizabeth II owned more than 300 pieces of jewellery. She wore about 50 to 60 regularly. That means over 240 pieces were rarely or never seen publicly. The 5 tiaras I've shown you today prove this pattern. The kokoshnik, one of her favourites. Unworn for over 2 years since her death. The Vladimir. Escaped a revolution. Now hidden in peace. The Strathmore Rose. Owned 70 years. Worn 0 times by the Queen. The Teck Crescent. Unseen for 85 years. The Delhi Durbar. Called the best by a king. Worn twice in 113 years. These jewels exist. They're documented, they're real, but they're invisible. And here's the question that fascinates me. If you own something beautiful, something valuable, something historic, but you never use it, never show it, never let anyone see it, do you really own it? Or does it own you? The royal vaults are full of treasures, hundreds of pieces we've never seen. Some are waiting for the right moment, the right wearer, the right occasion. Others may never emerge again. And that's the real story of royal jewels. Not the ones on display at the Tower of London. Not the ones tourists line up to see, but the ones locked away, hidden, waiting. The ones that tell us more about power and possession than any crown ever could. If this made you see royal jewels differently, I'd love a like on this video. Subscribe if you want more stories about what's really in those vaults. And drop a comment. Tell me which hidden tiara you most want to see emerge. The kokoshnik? The Vladimir? Or maybe one of the other 240 pieces we've never seen? Because somewhere in those vaults, there's a tiara that hasn't seen daylight in decades. And maybe, just maybe, your comment will inspire someone to bring it out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.